Welcome to Gun Owners of America's State of the Second podcast. I'm your host, Kailey.
And I'm John, and today we're talking with Jake from SAR Firearms. Jake, how are you today?
I am fantastic and appreciate the opportunity and the time to come talk with you guys.
Jake, can you give us a little backstory about yourself and a little bit about SAR?
Sure. Again, my name is Jacob Phair, Vice President of Sales for SAR Firearms. I've been in this industry for about 30 years and various different positions throughout to multiple manufacturers, whether it was product development and sales, even down to the gun counter stages in time, and a lot of years as a buyer, product development manager. So an industry that I am fond of, I love, started off with passion for the outdoors as a kid. And it's been a fantastic industry to be in. It's been a lot of fun and just some of the greatest people in the world. And so it's been a pleasure.
Now, being a mainly importer of firearms and ammunition at times, what are the biggest kind of restrictions that you see? And let's start with ammunition, and then we'll kind of talk about some of the firearms issues as well.
Yeah, importing is a different world. And for most people, especially just they are out there, they go to the general store, they pick up some ammunition, they go out and they blow some stuff up and have fun, which is what we should all be doing. But in a perfect world, the opportunity to import ammunition and the processes that we have to go through for it are a little different. Sometimes they're a little more stringent, and we're held to a kind of a different standard versus being able to manufacture in the U.S. And so there's actually some costs that incur that sometimes your imported ammunition isn't as inexpensive as people think it is. And so, we've all gone through an ammo crisis here as of late, which is starting to dwindle down, and we're starting to be able to find the calibers that we enjoy. But when the times are rough, the cost of materials to manufacture are fluctuating differently throughout the world. And so when you have to manufacture things, we set out to buy in large volumes over the course of several years to maintain better costs and to be able to maintain that and to be in line to get the procurement of the materials that you need. When you sell through ammunition and all the supplies and materials as fast as we did through COVID and through the riot times and all these things, it depletes everything so bad that you have to turn around much quicker than you anticipated to buy new supplies, and those supplies costs have come up. So when you do it in the United States, it's at a different time than, say, for maybe us in Turkey or over in Bulgaria or Russia when we were getting ammunition out of there. So there's a lot more to it. A lot of it's behind the scenes that you don't see when you just go to the store and you're like, hey, that's a great deal on some great ammunition. Let's go buy some, right? There's a bunch of us putting on a whole lot of weight and pulling our hair out and turning gray real fast, trying to make this a system that affords people to buy the ammunition they want for the price that's acceptable. You win some of those battles and sometimes you don't. But
well, and when you look at certain things, like and you and I are in the same channels when we're talking about stuff and looking at stuff from previous jobs. Sometimes you'll see an ad when you're in these channels for ammunition at 18 cents a round for 9mm. That's not what it is when it lands in the country. There's a lot going on there.
Correct. When you're able to manufacture here, comes off the line, gets put in a tray, the tray gets put in a box put in a case, and it's on a pallet, the pallet's on a truck, and then it's driven straight to a distribution center, right? For us, we have to, same process, comes off the line, we package it, but then we have to fit it into containers. Then we have to schedule those containers to be overseas to come. And some of those are quicker, some of those are longer. And as those costs rise and fall all the time with the import laws and with the cost of goods and everything going on, that fluctuates greatly. So what you may see here for 18 cents a round, that's not the case when we start to import ammunition with the taxes that increased or changed as we start to import, the shipping costs to import. So sometimes it's better and sometimes it's not. And so there's kind of a different set of rules that we have to abide. And there will be times where we will flat out, it is just not advantageous for us to bring ammunition over due to the cost of the goods. And we want to always be able to present, at least for us and our company, the best bang for the buck, right? And sometimes we just have to make those hard decisions and say, it's just not worth the time and energy to bring all that over when the supply is so great and the pricing is where it's at. But times change, and so therefore we look at those opportunities when the market is changing here. And we had some great opportunities when ammo was super hard to find, and we had buckets of it. And so with our firearms and our ammunition, we were sending over containers every week because we had it. We were flying guns over every Friday because we had them. And so we were plugging in as much product as we could to keep the business alive during a time where it was chaotic and you couldn't find anything. Right? And so for us, it was important for us to continue to support the U.S. with as much product as we could for the best quality and price we could.
Well, and I like how you said you were flying over guns. What people may not understand, and a lot of people don't see the logistical side of this, guns you can fly over immediately, or it takes a little bit, but it's almost immediately. Ammunition, it's 2 months on a boat, and who knows when the boat's gonna get here, or if what happens if that container gets shoved off because that boat's starting to have issues.
And it's all relevant. So you have to also look at, it's not a matter of how much space you can fill. So in a container, you've got the opportunity to fill it to the brim, or you have to look at the weight. And so when you start looking at how many rounds of ammunition can I squeeze into a container without going overweight, certain caliber, certain size, you may be able to get 1 million rounds in a container on certain things, but you may not be able to on other cartridges and other calibers. And yes, you are all subject to the captain of the boat and where it goes and how long it takes to get here. And so you can't just necessarily throw a container on a flight and get it over here like you can on other items. And so the logistic aspects of things, the timing, the calendar that you have to work with to try to get stuff over here, it's a lot more to it than picking up a phone call and saying, hey, can you ship me a couple million rounds of ammunition?
Right. And what people may not understand is that when you bought that ammunition in Turkey or wherever, you paid 18 cents a round. By the time it got here, let's call it 22 cents a round after all the fees. At that time of the market, that's a good price. But then the market changes in 2 months as it transfers over the ocean, and now you're 22 cents a round ammo where everybody else is at 20. You are way out of price in the market.
You do. You really, it can change overnight. And so when you start looking at putting a container on the water, and it could be a 2 week or it could be a month, there's a lot that happens in that ammunition market. If you're a super savvy ammunition guy, and I'm kind of an ammunition dork, so when you really sit down and you just start really looking, I mean, you can literally watch stocks change that fast. You can almost see ammunition at some ports at a time. You were able to find the price of ammunition fluctuating quite a bit. And it's all a supply and demand. I mean, when you really get down to it, it's a supply and demand type of an issue. And when the supplies are good, the prices are great. When the supply is not good, the prices aren't so great. And so you're constantly trying to manipulate as much as you can to fill all those voids whenever you can. And I will flat out say that, I am not the sharpest tool in the shed. And there are some guys out there that do the logistics that are, if you are a logistics person in this world, you are a hero, because the work that they do to get that product where it needs to be, when it needs to be there, hats off. We've got some just absolutely fantastic people that run the logistics side of shipping, and they're wizards. They just do a fantastic job, and we've been pretty lucky. We've had a really good run, and we've had a lot of good opportunities to bring stuff in and look to the future to do it a lot more.
Now, let's shift a little bit away from ammo. I mean, this is a really good conversation about ammunition, and we're really opening up some doors where people may not understand. But let's take a shift and let's talk about the firearm side. And being an importer, specifically, let's look at your new revolver that came out, I believe it was last year, correct?
Yeah, we officially launched it at SHOT Show at the beginning of 2023.
So with that revolver had been in Turkey for years. When you are an importer and working with a manufacturer in Turkey that you solely import from, when you look at that, what is the mindset of coming up with importing a new firearm that may be people see online in Turkey, and B, what is the restrictions and stuff for something like a revolver? Because we've talked a little bit about semi-autos, but a revolver is a totally different game.
It is a different game. I love revolvers, and there's such a fantastic market for it, and a sole believer that everybody should own one or multiple revolvers. But we had a great opportunity to bring those into the country, and it took us a while because revolvers are not as easy to manufacture as people think they are. There's more going on to that simple wheel gun than most people think. So to make them right takes some time, and then to be able to bring them over, we're held to some different restrictions to import that under their point program, right? And so it's not as easy here where fantastic companies can sit down and draw it out on paper and say, hey, we can make this gun real quick, and then go to the machine, make it, it's here, it's good to go. But for us to try to fill some of those voids, we're held to some other restrictions that you're not made in the U.S. And so we have barrel length restrictions, we have size restrictions, we have weight restrictions. We have all these things that we have to make sure all these parameters fit to then be able to bring that in and then have the opportunity to have ATF look at it. They have to test it, they have to vet it to give us that green light. And then once we have that green light, then we need to take all those, if there's any changes that we have to make, we have to go back and change, or if we're good to go, then we can start the actual manufacturing process. And revolvers, you can't, I love our striker fired polymer guns. Fantastic. But those are cookie cutter. I mean, you can punch out, Glocks, Smiths, SIGs, all these wonderful manufacturers, SAR Firearms. You can punch out a polymer gun pretty well and pretty quick, but a revolver takes a little bit more time. And there's same misconception when you look at a beautiful over and under shotgun. It's not just two barrels and a trigger and a hammer, right? There's a whole lot going on inside of that gun. And so it's time consuming. So where we may be able to manufacture, 10,000 guns in a month, you may be only set to be able to make 1,000 revolvers. They're just more meticulous. The timing is more important. And so to see it online and go, hey, why don't we have those here? It's a timely process. And some of those processes can be for 6 months, and some of those take almost a year to be able to make sure that everything's the way the ATF says it has to be, can be, and then we fit all the parameters, unless they change their mind, right?
So because you are tied to a manufacturer in Turkey,
yep.
When they come out with a new design, maybe for the European market, and you start getting phone calls, because you're going to get a phone call or an email
all the time.
At what point do you go, this is a viable product for the U.S. market? What are the restrictions for that? We talked about, because for those of you who don't know, the 1968 Gun Control Act is what controlled the importation of firearms. There's a point system. We talked about this a little bit. There's a point system. It all has to do with sporting purposes and this and that. And,
yep.
When you guys do that, what in your mind, what's the time frame of going, okay, we're getting enough demand for this, now it's time to import it? Or do you go, hey, we're getting enough demand, but by the time it lands here, we've priced ourselves out of the market?
Well, and that's a fantastic question. So for SAR Firearms, we are connected solely to a Turkish manufacturer called SAR Simals. SAR Simals themselves is a NATO manufacturer. So we make military and law enforcement firearms for all over the world. But there's always an ear, right? The largest commercial segment for firearms is the good old US of A, which is the Wild West. And so there's a lot of attention being, what can we do? The great thing about being on our side is we have the opportunity to work with such an incredible manufacturer that we can go to them and talk about the firearms that they already manufacture. But then what does the U.S. market want? What are they looking at seeing? And how can we fill those niches here? But that being said, being able to manufacture that and then be able to import that in a timely manner, your goal was to be at the forefront of a segment. And by the time all the red tape is done and we physically get it here, we're fourth or fifth in line. People have already done it. And or some of the cost values of things have shifted because of the industry shifts. And so we have to constantly kind of keep an eye on that. And, once you get a steamroller rolling, it's hard to turn it off. And so we just have to make those adjustments to things that we have to on the fly. But, our new subcompact that we came out with at SHOT Show, it's been in Turkey and in production and in service for a couple of years. And for us to get that here, it took way longer than it should have, and it took longer than we hoped and anticipated. So we're a little late to the game as the overall industry is to have a subcompact 9mm handgun. So what do? We make it so rich with features for the price point that we make up for it. And so we have the ability to do a lot of great things being manufactured in Turkey with a manufacturing facility that is just top notch. We've talked at length that some of the stigmas that out there about Turkey and some of their firearms, but to be able to manufacture a handgun in Turkey is not the same parameters, it's not the same licensing, and the restrictions and the oversight is nowhere near as loose as it is, say, for shotguns. And so there's a lot more to be able to manufacture handguns in Turkey. It's as bad as our NFA programs here or worse. To be able to be licensed to not only manufacture handguns, but also be a NATO manufacturer, and the specs and the quality control and the things that we have to meet those standards there in Turkey is huge in comparison to somebody that just maybe wants to make some shotguns. Much more wide open, a lot less oversight. And unfortunately, because of that, there are some incredible manufacturers in Turkey that bring shotguns over, and there are others that aren't so great. And so you, as a people, we tend to loop everything into one basket. Some of the greatest things, SAR has been in the game since 1880. So 140 years of manufacturing firearms for the world market. You got to be on top of your game.
This episode of the State of Second podcast is brought to you by Blackout Coffee. Check out their exclusive GOA No Compromise blend. GOA doesn't compromise on the Second Amendment. Blackout Coffee doesn't compromise on flavor. Check out Blackout Coffee at blackoutcoffee.com and put a little freedom in your morning. They've been in manufacturing since 1880. How long have they been stateside?
So we've had guns in the United States prior to 2019, and not always under our name. And so some of the importers were other manufacturers or other companies that were importing our product. At the end of 2018, really big major push at the beginning of 19, we came over as SAR USA. And really put the push on, these are our guns. We're proud of the guns that we're manufacturing. So SAR is short for SAR Somals. And so now as we go out there and we push our brand and our logo, and we say, SAR is everywhere under the SAR Firearms side of things, but we're still SAR USA. And really trying to get from that point where it was, I've never heard of SAR, to, I think I've heard of SAR, and my push and my goal is at the, by the end of this year, is where can I find a SAR? And so, having this opportunity to be here and talk to you guys, and also just being able to be out there in the public and get our guns and get our brand out there so people can know who we are and feel the quality and the firearms that we're being able to manufacture now is fantastic. And that's, I'll be telling you, that's what makes this business fun, right? Is getting out there. The people in the Second Amendment world are some of the greatest people on earth. And it's a joy to be able to go somewhere you've never been and talk to people you've never seen before, unfortunately, a lot of you don't know how ugly I am out there. So be able to sit there and talk to these people and just have a fantastic conversation because we're all like-minded people, and it's a ton of fun.
So from your perspective, we're seeing a massive increase in first-time gun ownership in the country. Is it easier for a brand like SAR Firearms to kind of make a name in a market that is so hot?
One would hope and think, but in today's world, with the advent of everybody has a mini computer on their phone, and everybody has that best friend that is a professional about everything, right? So you have the name brands, and so those are always the first and foremost. Unless that individual happens to already know a SAR and has one and loves it, we're not quite at that top of that list yet. But that being said, when we do have the opportunity to take a new shooter and to bring them in and show them the firearms and really spend some time with them, they see the value of what we're offering and the quality that's there. And the spark goes on that, hey, there are some other guns out there that aren't the mainstay, the name brands that people always associate with that are very good guns. And so sometimes it's a tricky one, because sometimes it's very easy to show somebody, especially when I can get in there and really have fun with them, to show them why we are what we are and what we do. But if they've had their family member or their best friend in their ear all day and tell them, hey, you need to buy this brand because it's the best, to remold that, you don't want to tell them that their family member or best friend's a liar. So, right. So
Yeah.
you have to kind of go in and massage that. But anybody that has the opportunity to get into the fight, you're never too young or too late. Right. And so we welcome everybody and all, whether it's your first time or whether you've got the collection that rivals the U.S. military.
Yeah.
We love you. Okay, come get them.
No, isn't that so true? I forget who said it today on the floor at TriggerCon, but someone said that gun owners are just undiagnosed hoarders, and I was like, I could see it.
I wouldn't discount that at all.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I mean, it's a little harsh, but
it's true.
It's kind of accurate.
It's funny because it's true. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong.
There's a lot of truth in that.
So, sorry, I totally derailed the conversation,
perfect.
but so obviously, as an importer, you're dealing with the bureaucratic agency. We've seen how rogue these agencies have become. We're seeing now the White House has essentially what is the Office of Gun Control, although they're calling it the what is it, the Gun of Violence Preservation or Prevention Office, which again is just going to throw so much gun control at us. It's probably ridiculous, or it is ridiculous. So how do you guys as a company respond to just the mass overreach that we've been seeing?
It's a tricky situation in that I'm a firm believer that the Second Amendment is not associated to a party. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and this is, I might get on the Jacob Phair soapbox here a little bit, but so I'm a firm believer that the Second Amendment is for all and everybody, and therefore we have the opportunity to arm ourselves. And firearms themselves at the get-go, have multi-purposes, right? And it's not all doom and gloom. We have firearms to provide for ourselves for food. We have originally firearms were meant for two things: to sustain our families for food, and obviously the defense aspects of things are there. And then as time has grown, I'm a big fan of telling people, hey, don't forget, shooting is just fun, right? Mm-hmm. So with that onset, with the government coming in and trying to demonize firearms, instead of taking the responsibility of not demonizing them and showing them that, you can have a firearm and no harm can come. It's not the object.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're trying to demonize an object that really is a paperweight until we decide as a human being. Unfortunately, human beings make good and or bad decisions. And so we suffer the consequences of those. And it's no like other industries out there. Every industry has people that misuse their product for good or bad. And unfortunately, there are lives that are affected by those decisions in every aspect. Unfortunately for us, because of the limelight, because of the spotlight that is on the firearm, it gets more ridicule and it gets more pressure than others. And so we have a red tape, and we have a lot that we have to consider when we're going to the market. We want to support the Second Amendment. Obviously, that's who we are. And we want to make sure that we voice that it's a lot of education, and it's a lot of being able to have people understand that it's not the object that's the problem, as much as it's the people. And you can point fingers at, I mean, we could talk for hours at what we think causes that. But there's definitely, we have to kind of, unfortunately, we have to kind of play the middle ground, because we have oversight from the government, but we're also very large supporters of the Second Amendment. So
Yeah.
it's a touchy line that we have to run sometimes.
I think there's 2 points that I want to hit from what you just said. And the first thing is demonizing the firearms. It wasn't very long ago that the Biden administration wanted to pull all of the hunter education and gun safety out of schools completely. Again, removing people from that on-ramp of understanding the Second Amendment, getting the training and the safety training that they needed to kind of feel confident in their right and start understanding their right, which is horrible and is something that we proudly fought against. And then the second thing that you said that I think is also important to touch on is it's bad people making bad actions. And murder is illegal. Assault is illegal. It's already illegal. Like, those things are criminal acts. And they should be criminal acts.
100%.
You blaming the tool is so frustrating. And I know we've been saying this episode after episode after episode, but it's a soapbox worth standing on.
It really is. Again, because a firearm has so many purposes, but unfortunately, it just gets the spotlight on it is turned in a different direction when we can really look at a firearm and know the points and purposes of all the different facets that it serves. But you don't see the spotlight on various other items that are out there that are used or cause. I use this analogy all the time, but we don't see and talk about all the cases of alcohol abuse and the amount of lives that ruins and touches. It's not that a firearm ruins a life more than the death by somebody that's stabbed with a knife. It doesn't mean that it's a worse scenario for somebody that loses a loved one to a drunk driver. Those are all bad, and they're all affecting lives. The fact that a firearm has affected a life doesn't mean that it's worse, but we demonize it more, and we make it more worse as a loss. I believe that all losses are bad, and you can't predict what's going to happen. And any object in the mindset of anybody that wants to do something bad, they're going to do something bad. So us, as a Second Amendment community, we have to stay strong, but we also have to do our part. And we preach about the safety of firearms that goes outside of making sure that our fingers aren't on the trigger, the barrel's pointing in the right direction. We know that's also securing our firearms in our homes. That's making sure that we're standing up as a group that talks about the importance and the safety of firearms all the way through, because we're the first ones that get pointed the finger at, but we're also the first ones that unfortunately suffer the wrath of people that have made bad decisions. And sometimes those decisions were because, unfortunately, sometimes Second Amendment people have been a little careless with some firearms, and they get into the hands of people that shouldn't have them, and then they're used improperly. And so, this is probably one of the most important times in my personal belief. I'll say this is not under the SAR umbrella here, but I truly believe that this is probably the most important time for those that are involved and appreciate and love the Second Amendment to make sure that we're stepping up above and beyond to make sure that we're doing our part in everything that we teach and everything that we preach and believe in and know about the safety and the value and the education of firearms, that we not only push that and we speak about it, that we make sure that we're practicing that 100%. And if we're doing our part right, the light will shine, I think, a little bit brighter on how we can utilize our firearms and how we can have them in a safer environment to help people that unfortunately shouldn't maybe have them or used in an improper way by us doing what we say we're going to do, right? And I think it's going to take everybody to elevate their responsibilities a little more.
And I really do appreciate that, because as a community, we are a strong community. We gather together when we're getting attacked on. We need to gather together. We're bringing in these 9 million new gun owners. We've harped on that number. We've harped on it, but it's true. We're bringing in people that months or years ago said, or to you or to me, that I will never own a gun. The gun is, and then a few years ago they call you. You know, I don't know about you, but I got calls, I got texts. Hey, what should I get? What do I need? What do I do? And to help them as a community, we should go in and go, first off, we should seek proper training and make sure that we take a training class or do this, but also to pass on that knowledge to the next generation or to somebody who may not know anything about firearms, to pass on that knowledge, because once you get into this, you are hooked. It is a fun hobby. It is an expensive hobby, but that's the joy of firearms ownership. I don't know about you guys, but I know I've taken people to the range who have said they don't like, or they were never going to. I know, Kailey, you had this experience where I don't want to try it, and next thing you know, they're trying it. Or you go to the range and the guy next to you has something that you've never seen, but you've seen it in a magazine. Like when I went to range day and saw the SAR 9 Sport, and I picked it up for I've seen this in all the magazines. I'm going to try this, and you go try it, and then you find a new love for a different platform or a different gun, you know. And that's what I really think we need to do as a community, is come together and invite people in. And we're really good at it, but we need to continue this growth of our community, because the more people we have in our corner, the stronger we are.
100%. And I've had the fantastic opportunity to take kids all the way up to senior citizens, right? Out shooting for the first time. And I can honestly, I cannot think of a single time where somebody hasn't turned around with a huge grin on their face. As apprehensive as they were, to start with, once they kind of curbed that fear and they got into it and they pulled that trigger, it was amazing. And everybody has a smile on their face. And so, again, I'm a big fan of understanding that guns don't have to be evil. They don't have to just be under the I'm going to defend, and we have the opportunity, again, to provide food for our families. We have the opportunity to come together as a family and go and spend a day at the range and shoot and have fun. And at the same time, teaching each other safety, teaching each other the importance of the firearm. You can go spend a lot of money and go sit in a movie theater and just watch fantasy, or you can go buy some ammunition and get out to the range and have some fun as a group of people or a family. Shooting is fun, hands down. But what you get out of that fun is then the ability to know that you can provide for your family, and or if the safety aspects of things and you need it to defend yourself, you can.
Yeah, and one of the things that we haven't discussed a lot is the narrative that surrounds firearm ownership from the demographic standpoint. Forever, the narrative has been old white men. Like, point blank, that has been the stereotype, that's been the soundbite of the anti-gun left. And what we're seeing with these new gun owners and these new people that are joining this community en masse, you're seeing more females, you're seeing more minorities. And the melting pot of the Second Amendment, it is not just what you think. And I don't want anyone to be listening to this podcast and being like, well, you know, I'm maybe thinking about firearms, you know, I'm consuming all of the content, but I don't know if it's right for me. I don't know if I'll find a place within the Second Amendment community. I challenge you to go to a range and just talk to people. We're a very welcoming group. And generally, we are very opinionated. Don't ever ask what caliber is best. You will never end the conversation.
We can do another podcast about that one.
What do you mean, 2 World Wars?
But generally speaking, though, there is such a almost, I would go as far as to say, a renaissance within the firearms community, in which there are so many new groups of people and so many new advancements within the firearms industry that has just allowed the community to really grow and thrive despite all of the things that are against us. And man, this administration has put a lot against us. But it really is phenomenal to see that growth.
Yeah, over the course of the several years, it's been so much fun, and I've said it for years, and I'll still say it. A firearm has no bias. It is an everybody object. There's no party line. There's no race line. There's no gender line. It is an object that can be used by all that will learn and understand and run it in a safe manner. In any aspect. And there is no age gap. I know several people. I've got 5 kids, and they all enjoy shooting. And I have 4 daughters, and they're absolutely amazing. And I won't tell you this I won't let them hear this podcast, but some of them shoot better than I do. And so they do fantastic. But to be able to see, just looking at the youth aspect of things, not to mentor, when you talk about a female or, older, it doesn't matter. Don't be afraid to find somebody, because there's a gun out there for you. And there's a group that you can be involved with and feel comfortable.
One of them is GOA.
One of them is.
Well, Kailey, you brought up Renaissance, and we've touched on this briefly with other people on this podcast. Jake, you've got 20 years on me in this industry.
I was say, you're calling me old.
I know. But what we've talked about this, and the culture of the guy behind the counter being this old grumpy man who was like, you need a 1911, sonny, because 2 world wars, or going to the females and going, you need a snub nose, has changed drastically in the last 7 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
A lot of them are becoming more educated. They're recommending different products. It used to be like, and you've been behind the counter, so like it used to be like, that guy's a Glock guy, that guy's a SIG guy, that guy's a Smith & Wesson guy. He's going to recommend only Glock 19s to whoever walks in the door. He's going to recommend shields to whoever walks through the door. This guy's going to recommend 320s to anybody who walks through the door. Now, when you come up to the counter, it's more of, hey, what's your budget? What's your price point? What's your this? Hey, let's find the gun that meets your features, the advantage, the benefits of everything. These guys have learned a lot more. And I don't know if that's because there's a culture shift. I don't know if it's because, they're watching and bringing in more of this content from YouTube and other platforms. But we're seeing them be educated where back in the day, the SAR Turkish 9mm handgun would be thrown off into the corner of the counter, and the store would have bought 5 because there was a deal at a buy group show, and it sat there, and then they'd clearance them out, and some people would buy it, and that would be it. Now it's more like, hey, your price point's X, Y, and Z. Take a look at this SAR, or take a look at this SAR, or whatever. Do you see that same culture shift? Yeah.
First off, I will say that SAR Firearms owners are the best owners. Just saying that. No. But it's very true. There's so much, and I think a lot of it really comes down to multiple things. One, social media. As many outstanding things that there are with it, and as many woes about social media. There's a lot of greats and there's a lot of not greats, but we have the ability to sit around and become almost, without really thinking about it, the educational aspect of things is huge. And so when we have the opportunity to really tell our story on the social media side of things, but we have the opportunity to get into that dealer base and we talk to the dealers, the biggest thing I think that we found over in short time, you look at a 9mm. A 9mm of yesteryear is not the same as our 9mm of today, right? With the advancements of material, the advancements of engineering, the advancements that we've had through technology, we've really been able to do things with firearms that you couldn't do back when grumpy old Stan was selling you a gun out of his smoke shop / gun store. And the firearms themselves have changed so much that it's made it so much more user-friendly that it's really welcomed a very diverse group of people, to where there is almost a firearm to fit any need for any individual, whether you have weaker hands, arthritis, and you have smaller hands and grips. there are so many advancements that we've seen. So we've really seen that opportunity to come in and, hey, it's not just you need a 1911 there, son. It's what kind of firearm are we looking for? I'm also a big believer that firearms are also somewhat of a tool, and not every firearm does every job perfectly. So this is my ploy to buy more firearms, right? But you have the ability to have a gun that's going to do this job for you and fit this individual for what their needs are, which may not be the same. So if I'm buying a gun for myself, my wife's gun may be different. She's the one that'll buy that 1911 and run it like a champ, and I'm the one that's buying the subcompact 9mm, right? Or vice versa. And so I think with the advancements that we've seen over the last, even the 10 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's really opened up a lot to where guys like us have more of a leg to stand on, and we have those opportunities to fill some of those niches that other manufacturers may have missed or oversee or overlook. With our new Gen 3s that we have on our new SAR 9 Gen 3s, those guns are coming with full set of night sights, cut for a red dot, a new flat trigger, more aggressive slide with more serrations. And I mean, the value that we're getting out of that gun to the public fits anybody, right? And so we allow that opportunity for any walk of life to come in, to be able to find a gun that fits their needs and fits their niche, and to be able to go out and run that gun. The more we shoot, the more fun we have. The more fun we have, the more we shoot, but the more proficient and the better we are at it. And I think that's the biggest thing is, shooting is just not let's pick up a gun and run a mag through it and not see it for a year. Again, it comes down to shooting is fun. And the more we do it, the more responsible we are with it, the more accuracy we get, the more confident we get, and then we're more, we feel better to be able to conceal carry. We better to be able to service and field questions for family and loved ones that may start getting into it for the first time. And we're just all around just more educated.
Yeah, and one of the things, not to bring down the mood, is this education largely starts for most people behind the gun counter.
A lot.
And we're seeing this attack by the ATF with the zero tolerance policy. GOA currently has a case. For those people who might not be familiar with the zero tolerance policy, it is allowing the ATF to revoke their license to operate. It immediately puts them out of business for as little as a clerical error. And so this is a massive, massive problem, because what you're seeing is you have fewer and fewer gun stores because of the zero tolerance policy, at the same time that you're seeing more and more gun owners. And so you're limited on your choices to go and maybe see different trainers that are working at different ranges, to be able to see different product offerings. But let's also not forget that the firearms industry is subject to the same supply and demand issues. And so the less competition that you have in your local area, it also drives up the price. And so all of these things, or the wait list, and there's so much down the line that this affects for the gun owner. So you might be thinking, oh, well, the zero tolerance policy, it really doesn't have a lot to do with me as the gun owner. But, it does. And that's why, this podcast exists, is to help thread that needle for people.
I think anytime that you start to put a restriction on anything in the firearms, it's going to adversely affect everybody, whether they're attacking the dealer side of the business or the consumer and the owner side of the business. Eventually, it will affect everybody. And I, again, I say that, probably now more than ever is our opportunity as dealers, as consumers, and as Second Amendment advocates to really stay up on what's going on. Don't be afraid to voice it. Don't be afraid to go out and support it. Not so long ago when I had opportunities to work with ATF hand in hand, there was a group of us that would go meet with the ATF at their headquarters and sit down and discuss all of the regulatory issues that are out there. And as big as the ATF is, there are a lot of misunderstandings inside of the ATF on itself, let alone what they're trying to enact upon us as dealers at the time to follow. And when you would bring up something that they thought wouldn't exist, there's red flags. And so I think that it's become such an issue where there's not definitive. And so there's a lot of things that aren't written in stone, but you may suffer the consequences of an investigator that has an opinion. And the opinions can sometimes affect what happens when you have, if a lot of people don't know, when ATF comes in to do an audit, they look through all your paperwork, they look through your inventory, they do all these things. And sometimes the things that they decide that you're not doing right aren't spelled out in stone in any of the ATF literature. And so then you have to really sit down and describe that and discuss that with them. And so sometimes there's a void there. And so for the ATF to come back and say, you can't make any mistakes, when we could very easily turn around and show them the multitude of mistakes, it's not the same playing field. And I think that's part of the problem, is you're holding other people to a higher standard than yourself. And that's not the way that things should be run. If you're going to regulatory and have policies and procedures over other people, you need to be on top of your game, and you need to be the professional at it. And when you've got as many, issues as some poor dealer that's out there trying to make a living and run an honest business, the oversight there doesn't quite match.
Yeah, and the worst part about this is not just that they're worried about something that they didn't know existed before it was manufactured, but it's this redefinition.
Yeah.
It's things that have been approved for a very long time. We go to the pistol braces, 40 million. And then one day, let's just redefine it. The frame and receiver rule, all of this stuff that the ATF is doing, all the way back to the redefinition of a bump stock as a machine gun, which is ludicrous. I mean, it's been so frustrating to have to deal with an agency from GOA's perspective of educating gun owners, of helping them take action, and then fighting them in the courts when they're just redefining something it feels like every day.
Yeah, and keeping it vague, right? So if you keep it vague, then you can kind of make it up on the fly, right? That's my personal feeling, is if you had a defined definition of what it is and this is what it is, then that's what it is. If you're going to keep it vague, then it's left up into interpretation. And so whose interpretation oversees somebody else's, right? So that's where we started to get into the sticky parts. And so it's frustrating. It's frustrating as a manufacturer to make sure that we're constantly staying up on making sure that everything that we're supplying fits all of those narratives, right? It's frustrating as a dealer trying to stay on top of all of those changes. And I don't know anybody outside of a lawyer that knows legalese all that well. And so trying to decipher all of that is just a nightmare for most people. Granted, I'm sure 80, 90% and 100% of the people are smarter out there than I am. So they're able to go through and probably get that. But there's a lot of people that it's not clear. And so to put the onus on a consumer, to put the onus on a dealer that has to be perfect when you writing your policies are so vague, again, it's not apples to apples. And I think that's a large part of the problem that we're running into now. And hopefully, as more dealers, more gun owners, and more Second Amendment advocates start to be able to stand up, then we make them more responsible for what they're doing.
Well, you speak of frustration, and you said earlier, when you go to import a gun, and you may be beat to the market because of all the red tape that you have to go through. Yeah. What is that level of frustration for you? Because you may have something that's first in the market, and now because it may get launched in Europe, because there's a market there, now everybody in the U.S. who can see that, go, okay, there's a demand for this, make their own version and bring it to market before you can even get it into the country. It's got to.
There's a lot of frustrations to it, and we love to think that we've got fantastic ideas and some opportunities to fill a market or a niche that we feel may be a void. And so for us to be able to manufacture and get that here in a timely manner, it leaves some exposure and it leaves some opportunity to leave things on the table. But I'm a firm believer that once we start the path, we finish the path. And despite what may come out in the process of, we're going to do our best to continue to push the firearms to the market that we feel the market needs. And if we're first to the game, we love it. But we are not, that's fine, because we know the quality of our firearms are there. The the availability to buy that gun for the right price is there. And so even if we may get beat on something and we may not be first to the market, we're very confident, and I personally feel that we're as equal or better than a lot. And so we're still going to bring that to market. We're still going to offer that firearm. We've started that path, and we're going to start what we finish. And we'll take as much of that market share as we can. And hopefully we do a good enough job to entice the consumers to come into our dealers. And that's where that relationship really starts. Our job is to manufacture a really good firearm. Our job is to create the demand to the consumers that want to go find that firearm. And then our relationship starts there with the dealer to buy and stock that firearm. And then that's where that symbiotic relationship really comes into effect, is we're doing our job to build a fantastic firearm for a great price. Then we're going to go out and tell everybody, this thing is awesome. You guys should go check it out. But if the dealers don't step up and support us like we're supporting them, then you can't find it. And so that's what makes this whole thing work, is our dealer base is the lifeblood of our whole industry. And so we love our dealers. And so we want them to be able to stand up, and we want to be able to push that. So we have people come in and say, hey, I saw a SAR in an ad and I really want to play with that gun. Do you have one? And he's going to stand up and goes, you bet. You know what? We just got some in and they're phenomenal. Come get your hands on them. Let's play with them. Let's look at them. Let's show you how great these are. And then, we finish that relationship. And that's what makes this whole thing go around, right? And so I think as we continue to do our part and we find the relationship with great people in this industry, we're able to continue to drive this business going forward. All the frustrations, all the loopholes, we keep on ticking, right? We keep coming back. We keep finding ways to be able to make and supply the firearms to the people that need them and want them. We just have to stay on our toes, right? And we've just got to be vigilant at what we do.
Yeah, and historically, and I want to look at Turkish manufacturing again real quick. Historically, Turkey has been called the copycat of Europe, right? And what I see there, people always push it down because, it's a copy of this or it's a copy of that, where really it's may take design aesthetics from this or design aesthetics from that or a piece, and they put it together. I want that because that's like the best of everything. And for somebody who's shot a lot of guns and a lot of Turkish guns, I see where they have maybe taken design cues. I wouldn't say clone, but design cues, and put it together to make a phenomenal product at the end of the day. And I know that when in a previous area, I shot the SAR 9 Sport, and I noticed there's some small little design cues that you look at and you're like, wow, what do you have to say about, people saying those things, or how do you combat that?
Well, I think you have to look at, if you go back and follow the history of firearms, the lineage goes all back to a few, right? Yes. And without being a cynical person and without trying to, poke fun at different things, it's like, when people come up and say, oh, that's a clone of this. And well, that's like saying every 1911 is a clone of a Colt Knight. What do we call that? No, we call it a 1911, right? And so, everybody out there started from something and then changed it or made improvements upon. And so we've had the opportunity to look at a lot of great firearms and come with our own. And or possibly look at some other opportunities to improve upon other items that have been out there. And so I wouldn't say that we're any different than anybody else out there that sees a great idea and goes forward with it. And how can we make it ours? Whether it's in the materials, whether it's improving upon some weak points in other manufacturing, everybody has that opportunity to start with something and make it their own. And that's what we've done. We've been able to take some fantastic firearms and really elevate them. And they're not a clone of anybody else. They're ours. And we manufacture them. And there are our creations that we've been able to come up with. And we own them. And we put our passion and our soul and our heart into making the best gun that we can, that we feel is representative of the things that we can manufacture. And then we push those out to the market. And so my say to those that say that is, come put your hands on them. They're not going to bite you. Come put your hands on one. Come feel one. Come play with one. Go shoot one. Come find me, and we can sit down and we can discuss it in detail, all the great things that are offered. And Turkey is an absolute fantastic country. and they make some of the greatest firearms out there. And so I think, again, when we talked about the shadow and some of the negativity that's out there, you can't always judge one by a whole, right? And so for all those naysayers out there, I say, come put your hands on some, and let's play with them, and then let's talk about it after that.
So switching gears a little bit, another big target that has been put on the firearms industry came from the Safer Banking Act. For those that might not be familiar, there was a bill introduced that has to do with just the financial system in general. It has a significant amount to do with the firearms industry and potentially vilifying the firearms industry. We've seen this with American Express and Discover also targeting the industry and gun ownership. Obviously, this has massive repercussions at every level. What is your take on something like this and this massive overreach?
I look at it twofold. It's frightening that they've gotten to the point where they're going to circumvent and go after financials, because there should be a safe place in our country that has been founded upon entrepreneurship and being able to make a business and thrive, and yet we're gonna pick on a small group, and the fact that they can let that happen to try to push things into the firearm side of things when there's a whole host of other things that get overseen and overlooked, just shows, I think, partially, and I say a lot of this not necessarily as SAR Firearms brand, but me personally, I think there's some desperation there, and which means that it didn't work the first several times that they've tried to take guns away from U.S. citizens. So what are their other recourse? Where are other places that they're going to find every avenue. They're going to explore every channel to get their point across. And so we have to stand up, and we have to make sure that they understand that we see what they're trying to do. And then we need to stand up and say that it's not right. And if you're going to make it a playing field that's even, if you open up that box where you say that you can go and sue a manufacturer for making a firearm that was used in a horrific crime, even though that wasn't the manufacturer, that's like saying now that I can go after any alcohol company that made the alcohol, but an individual used it and ended up having, an accident and taking a life. You're opening up that it needs to be a fair playing field. And you cannot, in our world, should not be able to focus in and really hone in and pick on a specific category or an industry like the firearms industry, and not make it a level playing field with several other industries. And when you start to do that, you start to create more division. And when you start to create more division, things can get heated. And I think that the more level-headed we are and we understand, the better off we're able to combat the things that we don't think are right. Pay attention to who you're electing. Pay attention to the products you're using. Pay attention to your financial institutions, and stand up. We don't work for them; they work for us.
And I think that's so important. So for those of you who are listening that might not know this, but every election cycle, GOA publishes the grades of everyone at the federal level, how they voted. You can see who is an A, who's a B, who's a C, or God forbid an F. If you live in those districts, one, you should have stayed up to date in the beginning because you probably should know roughly where you stand.
Right.
But it's so important because a lot of times during the campaign season, everyone comes out with their ad, I support the Second Amendment. But they have to put their money where their mouth is, right? They have to vote appropriately. And you as an individual have the ability to truly let them know where you stand. You can go to gunowners.org right now and just scroll through a list of everything that you can take action on. and you can email your representatives, because ultimately they work for us. But if they don't hear your voice, then how are they supposed to know how to represent you? Truly. And I get very, well, here I am on my soapbox again, just for every episode, but it is so important that we hear the complaints. We feel the complaints, and we want to fix the problem, but ultimately it comes down to that personal responsibility. You've probably heard me say this now 500,000 times, and it's GOA's definition of what a gun rights activist is. I think it's one of the core pieces of who we are as an organization, and the definition is this. A gun rights activist is someone who takes personal responsibility not only in the use of their firearms, but in the defense of their right to own them. It is so critical that each of us understand that we have to let our voices be known. We have to take the time and set an alarm on our phone to once a week check in, because the attacks are so strong, but we have to let our voices be stronger.
100%.
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. We're going to get you a soapbox now. I'm going to have it at SHOT Show. It's going to be the myriad of gifts you're getting for SHOT Show.
Whatever.
It's a good soapbox.
Yeah.
That's the sub content for the social media. It's just Kailey's soapbox. It's a playlist.
Yeah.
Go check it out.
Hey, it's fantastic. Again, you want to make a difference? Be that person that makes a difference.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the new Gen 3. Let's kind of break that down, because that is new. That's exciting for you. That's launching.
It's awesome.
Let's do a two part question.
Okay.
As a importer, because we've asked people who are manufacturers this, as an importer, maybe a little bit different. What is it like before a launch, and what is it like after the launch, during the launch, and then talk about the new product?
It's a lot of fun. I love this industry, and I'm a product geek. I love stuff. And so to be able to be on the product development side of things and listen to the people, what are the people really seeking for? What do they want in a firearm? And, obviously, not just what I like, because nobody's as weird as I am, and I like weird stuff. So you try to go and find, what do the overmass of the consumers really looking for in a firearm. And then you put a lot of time and effort and sweat and tears into making what you feel is fitting that niche. And so when you start to look at guns, and a lot of us that have been in this industry for a long time see this evolution in the firearm, right? And what do people buying guns, but then what are they turning them into, right? So that whole evolution in making a gun yours is more prevalent now than it's ever been, ever. And so it's a lot of fun to see the creativity that people have. So when we developed the Gen 3, we said, hey, what are most people wanting to do with their guns? And let's offer it to them for them. And let's take some of the work out of it for them, which inherently makes the cost go down. And so when we developed it, but I'm a big fan of also believing that if you're going to do things to a firearm, they need to be functional. Anybody can just drill a hole in a slide and it looks cool. But what's the functionality purpose of that, right? So not only can it look cool, but does it function? Does it help improve the firearm, whether it's the firearm itself shooting or whether it's you manipulating that firearm? And so for us, for those that are out there and you have an opportunity to come see, our SAR 9 has gone into a new generation, what we call the Gen 3. And we've also incorporated our subcompact into what's a Gen 2, but it has the same features and slide as our Gen 3. And so really what we've done is we've created that slide to make it more purposeful, useful, to where we have much deeper and better slide serrations to manipulate the slide on the rear. We have more slide cuts on the front of the slide, but that are also, again, purposeful in being able to get a better purchase on the front of that slide to manipulate it, whether you've got gloves or, cold hands, wet hands, whatever the case may be. But it also lightens up that slide when you have now our red dot cut. And so every slide that we have on our Gen 3s are cut for an RMS C cut red dot. Then we throw on a full set of night sights and a new flat trigger. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck on a firearm that just runs incredibly well. And so it takes a lot of that, hey, I'd love to buy this gun, but I need to do a new trigger. I want to do, and it puts it already built in that gun for you. And then on top of that, we have some really great colors. So we offer them in black because black is black. But you have OD green. I'm a huge OD green geek, and I love it. We have a bronze that's a really, really nice color, and then a platinum that's a little bit darker gray. And so it has that opportunity to still give you the opportunity to have a gun that looks really nice. You still have opportunities to outfit that gun with accessories, but it's a purposeful reason to have those pieces and parts there. So then we put all this stuff together, and then we were able to be here at TriggerCon, and we're able to put it out there for the people to pick up for the first time. And the instant somebody picks up that gun and just goes, wow, that thing feels amazing. It's like Christmas, man. All this hard work, everything that you thought, you're hoping, you're praying, you're like, please, dear all that's holy, let people see what we're trying to do, and they get it, right? And it's so much fun to be able to sit there, and I've been able to do this with other manufacturers as well. And it's a lot of fun to be able to build this whole thing and then bring it to the market and then get it into the hands. And when people shoot that, we were happy to be at a fantastic event with Primary Arms last week out in Wichita. And thank you, Wichita. You guys were fantastic. And so, or not Wichita, that's here. It was in Dallas. It was Waxahachie. Also great people. So we had a great time there with Primary Arms, and we did an event there. And the feedback that people were coming who've never touched our gun, that probably didn't even know who we were. I had an opportunity to talk about the company, took them, put the rounds downrange, and have them come back and just mind blown on how great that firearm. It's a lot of pride. It's a lot of satisfaction. It's a lot of pats on our back. That we've done what we set out to do, and we feel and think that we heard the call, right? And we heard the people say these are what we're looking for, and we delivered it. It's a ton of fun, and again, that's what makes this industry so fun. It's the people, it's the being able to go and listen to them and talk to them and try to put together a product that they're seeking for. And then when they're able to pull the trigger on it and you see the smiles and, all the great things that people say about them after they're able to pull the trigger, it's just a lot of fun. And I've been super happy and super blessed to be with SAR. I think it's just an amazing company. And the firearms that we're able to produce and we're putting out now on our Gen 3 series, but also our SOCOM, are just incredible guns, and they look amazing, but even more so that they shoot incredibly well.
Well, I need to try out the SOCOM. I handled the Gen 3 today, and I think the first words out of my mouth are, wow. I handled the SAR 9 Sport. Again, same thing. I was like blown away by it. Did a full test and evaluation of it. Really, really enjoyed that one. And I think that's what people need to understand is there's so many good firearms out there that may not have the brand recognition as some of the bigger names. But SAR is such a big company and well built and built for NATO and everything. You got to go try these things. And now I'm on my soapbox, talking about the industry. I'm as big as an industry nerd as you are. We've sat and had industry conversations for hours about things like this. But I love to see when companies listen to their consumers, listen to input, go in and go, hey, this has got to be functional. And it has to work and it has to do, it doesn't need to be aesthetic. Where we've seen some side serrations in the front that have been aesthetic, and not to name any names, but I do want to see one in white. I want a Stormtrooper version. Let's just check that out because those are cool.
SAR 9 CX Storm.
Yes,
I know a guy.
You know a guy. We all know. It's funny how every time we do this, we know a guy.
It's almost like they're the guest.
Yeah, I know. Let's go ahead and wrap up. Jake, where can people find SAR Firearms? Yeah, any information that you may have, any questions that you may need answered, sarusa.com, Instagram, SARUSA official. Check us out, give us a like, follow us. Have any questions? Don't hesitate, reach out, and we're happy to put you in the direction that you need. And first and foremost, get out there, find them, put them in your hand, and give them a shot. We're pretty happy with them. We think they're pretty fantastic. Now, we always give the guest an opportunity at the end Do you have anything new or exciting that you feel like needs to be brought up coming up?
We have a table full of some really fun stuff that we're working on. Some of them will be some iterations and some updates on some previous firearms, and some of them will be brand new for us. I will tell you that keep your eyes and ears open. We've got some. I'm excited about it, and I'm a dork. I know it, but we've got some really, really great stuff that we're working hard on right now. That we should be able to offer that will be different than what we've been able to offer in the past.
And will those be coming out at that certain place in January? Or around?
I am pushing my hardest to have. We'll have some stuff there that we'll be able to show, and we may not be available to the public yet, but we'll have some stuff there. If you guys have some opportunities, dealers, anybody that's there, SHOT Shows are fantastic. But you come and see us, come check us out. Again, follow us and like us, and we'll start releasing stuff as soon as we've got it ready. I'm happy to have you guys put your inputs in. If there's something out there that's not out there that you want to see, let us know. You never know what we have around the corner.
Yeah, I love hearing that. Well, guys, thank you for listening and watching today. Make sure to leave like, share, subscribe, leave a 5-star review on all podcasting apps. Make sure to follow us at State of the Second completely spelled out. Make sure to join GOA, $25 a year. Go to gunowners.org and help us fight tyranny. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.